Chapter 12. The Painted Future. The candles flickered low in the west wing that night, but Isolde couldn't sleep. Even with Cassian beside her, arm heavy across her waist, breath cool at her neck, her mind churned with relentless images: the blood chalice, the judgment, the golden light that had coursed through her veins when vampire blood should have killed her. Each memory pulsed like a heartbeat behind her eyes, keeping rest at bay. And then there was the name, Illyrian. It had come to her unbidden during their conversation about Virelle's message, rising to her lips as if she had always known it. Now it echoed in her dreams like prophecy, like warning, like fate, and refused to leave her waking thoughts. Isolde stared at the canopy above their bed, watching shadows dance across midnight fabric. Through their bond, she felt Cassian's presence, deep and calm in sleep, his immortal mind wandering paths she couldn't follow. What did vampires dream of? Did they revisit centuries long past? Or did they, like mortals, glimpse fragments of possible futures? The thought of futures brought her back to Virelle's message, tucked now in the hidden pocket of her nightdress. What sleeps beneath the mountain is stirring. Something ancient was awakening, something connected to their bond, to the curse, to whatever destiny was unfolding around them. She needed answers. Before dawn tinged the sky, Isolde slipped from bed, careful not to disturb the sheets more than necessary. She dressed quickly in simple garments, a plain gown of deepest blue, sturdy boots, a hooded cloak to shield her from both morning chill and curious eyes. As she fastened the silver clasp at her throat, she felt Cassian stir behind her. "Where are you going?" he asked, voice rough with sleep yet instantly alert. She turned to find him watching her, dark eyes reflecting the dying candlelight. "To find a future I can live with," she answered truthfully. Something passed across his face: concern, resignation, understanding. He didn't ask if he could accompany her. He didn't warn her of dangers. He simply nodded once, an acknowledgement of her choice. "The Eastern Gate," he said quietly. "The guards there are loyal to me. They'll let you pass without question." Isolde crossed back to the bed, bending to press her lips to his, in silent thanks. His hand came up, fingers tangling briefly in her hair before releasing her. "Return to me," he said. Not quite a command, not quite a plea. "Always," she promised. The castle was quiet as she made her way through corridors lit only by the occasional guttering torch. Dawn was the safest time to move through Valenhart. Most vampires had already retired to their chambers, while mortals who served them had not yet risen to begin their daily tasks. The few guards she encountered were hollow-eyed with fatigue after night-long vigils, more focused on the approaching end of their shifts than on a hooded figure passing swiftly through the shadows. As promised, the guards at the Eastern Gate asked no questions when she approached. One simply bowed his head respectfully, the other turned his back, pretending he hadn't seen her at all. The heavy iron gates swung open just wide enough for her to slip through, then closed with a soft clang behind her. Beyond the castle walls lay a different world. The eastern territories of Valenhart were wild, untamed, ancient forests that predated even vampire rule. Trees so tall and thick they seemed to hold up the sky itself. Mortals rarely ventured here, knowing instinctively that these woods belonged to older powers, to magics that had no interest in human concerns. Isolde followed a narrow path that wound between massive trunks, their bark glistening with morning dew. The red grove where Virelle made her home lay somewhere within this primeval forest. But Isolde realized, with growing unease, that the path looked different now than it had during her previous visit. Trees she didn't recognize crowded closer to the trail. Roots snaked across the ground in patterns that seemed almost deliberate, as if to trip unwary travelers. The air hung heavy with the conflicting sense of decay and flowering life, rot and roses intertwined in unsettling intimacy. The forest was listening, watching, reacting to her presence. She walked for what felt like hours, though the position of the sun barely changed in the fragments of sky visible through the dense canopy. Time moved differently here, as if the forest itself decided how quickly or slowly moments should pass. Finally, when frustration had begun to give way to genuine concern, the path widened suddenly, opening into a circular clearing. The Red Grove. Unlike her first visit, when she'd found Virelle's dwelling by accident while seeking solitude from castle life, the witch was waiting for her now. She stood at the centre of the clearing, dressed in a gown of faded crimson that seemed to shift and flutter even without wind. Her silver-threaded black hair hung loose around a face that might have been beautiful once, before time and magic had carved it into something more interesting than mere beauty. "You've seen it, haven't you?" Virelle said without preamble. Isolde stepped into the clearing, lowering her hood. "I've seen pieces," she admitted. "Fragments that make no sense. A name I shouldn't know. A connection I don't understand." "Then you've only tasted the despair," the witch replied, her voice neither kind nor cruel, simply matter of fact. "Drink deeper, if you truly wish to understand." "That's why I've come." Isolde moved closer, refusing to be intimidated by either the witch's presence or the unsettling way the trees seemed to bend inward around the clearing, creating the impression of being watched by a vast, silent audience. "I need to know what comes next, what our bond means, what awakens beneath the mountain." Virelle studied her with eyes that shifted colour as Isolde watched, amber to green to something darker than black. Then she turned and gestured toward what Isolde had first taken for a natural pool at the clearing's edge. It was, in fact, a mirror, a massive circle of obsidian, polished to such perfection that it reflected the sky above like still water. Its frame was crafted from interwoven branches of bloodthorn, their vicious spikes pointing outward as if in warning. Frost rimmed the edges despite the morning warmth. "Then choose a thread," Virelle said, "and follow it." Isolde approached the obsidian mirror cautiously. "What will I see?" "Possibilities. Paths. Fragments of what might be." Virelle's voice softened slightly. "You ask about futures as if there is only one. There are thousands, millions, all branching from each choice, each breath. I can show you only those most likely, most strongly woven into the pattern of what you and your prince have already set in motion." Isolde knelt beside the mirror, its surface unnaturally still, reflecting her face with perfect clarity. Behind her reflection, she could see Virelle waiting, expression unreadable. "How do I—" "Touch the surface," the witch instructed, with intent. "Ask your question in your heart, not with your lips." Drawing a deep breath, Isolde placed her palm against the obsidian. It felt neither cold nor warm, but alive, pulsing gently beneath her touch like a heartbeat. She closed her eyes, focusing her thoughts. "Show me our fate, mine and Cassian's. Show me what becomes of our bond." The surface beneath her hand rippled like disturbed blood, thick, viscous, resistant. Then, with a sensation like being pulled underwater by strong currents, Isolde felt herself falling into the mirror, consciousness separating from body as the visions claimed her. Vision 1. A throne of ice and bone. She stands in the great hall of Valenhart, but it's transformed. Walls bleached bone white, floor polished to mirror brightness, throne raised higher than before and crafted from what appears to be solidified frost and vertebrae interwoven in macabre artistry. Cassian's place, but he does not sit there. She does. Crown on her brow, not gold, not silver, but crystal that glints with crimson light as if blood flows within it. Court kneeling before her, faces turned downward in fear rather than respect. Her hands rest on the armrests, pale, perfect, immortal. And then she sees him. Cassian lies at the foot of the throne, body still, eyes open but unseeing, not breathing, not moving, not even in the vampire way of perfect stillness. This is different. This is ended. He is gone. As understanding dawns, the vision shifts, showing her what came before. her own hands driving a dagger forged from pure soulfire into his heart, his expression not of betrayal but of acceptance, of sacrifice. Murdered by her own hand. The dagger still clutched in her grip glows with unearthly light, its magic having transformed her even as it extinguished him. On the blade, words inscribed in a language she shouldn't understand yet somehow does. One must die that one may rule. The court whispers a title as she rises from the throne. All hail the Crimson Queen, bride of thorns, last of the Nightborn. She screams, but no sound emerges. In this future she has no voice left with which to mourn. Vision 2. The Blood Wedding. Midnight in the castle gardens, transformed by thousands of floating witchlights into a cathedral of living flame. Cassian waits beneath an arch woven from black roses and silver thorns, dressed not in his usual severe black, but in ceremonial attire of deepest midnight blue embroidered with stars, a cloak of shadows rippling around his shoulders. She walks toward him on a path strewn with white petals that turn red where her feet touch them. Her gown is the colour of fresh blood, her veil crimson gossamer that obscures yet reveals, her hands bound with silver chains that trail behind her like a second train. Above them the moon hangs full and swollen, redder than it should be. A blood moon, portent of change, of magic, of boundaries crossed. They speak vows in a language older than Valenheart itself. When his lips meet hers, the kiss sparks actual flame, fire that races from their joined mouths outward, spreading across the garden, the castle, the kingdom beyond. Not destroying, but transforming, remaking the world in the image of their union. The witnesses, vampire nobility, witch covens, even representatives from mortal lands, rise in unified acknowledgement of something unprecedented, something powerful beyond measure. But as they turn to face their subjects, as they join hands for the first dance, Isolde sees Cassian's shadow split in two upon the ground. One remains attached to him, moving as he moves. The other pulls away, separating, becoming something distinct, taking form, taking substance, whispering in a voice that is Cassian's, yet not his. Only one can survive the bonding. Only one may wear the crown of night. The shadow stretches a hand toward her, its fingers elongating into claws, its form growing massive, towering over the celebration as the blood moon pulses like a heart above. Choose, it commands, him or you, love or power, mortality or eternity. She reaches for Cassian, but her hands pass through him as if he's already gone. The shadow laughs, the sound like breaking glass, like tearing flesh. Too late, it mocks. The choice was made when you drank from the chalice. Vision 3. The Endless Sleep. Winter light filters through stained glass, casting jewel-toned patterns across a chamber deep within Valenheart's oldest wing. At its centre stands a coffin unlike any other, crystal clear as finest glass, rimmed in silver filigree that forms protective runes, floating inches above the ground, through magic beyond mortal understanding. She lies within, perfectly preserved, neither living nor dead. Her skin holds the translucence of finest porcelain, her lips the palest pink, her hair spread around her like dark water frozen in an instant. She does not breathe. Her heart does not beat. Yet she is not gone, merely suspended between moments, between heartbeats, between lives. Cassian kneels beside the coffin, one hand pressed against the crystal surface, eyes fixed on her unchanging face. He has not left her side in decades, perhaps centuries. Time means nothing to his grief. He looks the same. Vampires do not age, do not change, but his eyes hold oceans of sorrow, of rage, of helplessness. He has tried everything: blood magic, ancient rituals, bargains with powers that demand terrible prices. Nothing has awakened her. She does not wake, and he does not die. They exist in parallel eternities, he in unending mourning, she in endless sleep, forever apart, yet never free of each other, the bond that joined them now their mutual prison. "I should have let you go," he whispers to her still form. "I should have been stronger than my love for you." Behind him, a figure watches from shadows, the king, unchanged, unmoved, satisfied that his son's rebellion has been contained in the most exquisite torture imaginable. "You chose this," the king reminds him. "When you bound yourself to mortality, you assured mutual destruction." Cassian doesn't turn, doesn't acknowledge his father's presence. His hand remains against the crystal, as if millennia of touch might eventually reach through to her. "Leave us," he says simply. The king smiles, cold, victorious. "I already did, my son. Centuries ago." Isolde screamed as the visions shattered like glass striking stone, fragments slicing through her consciousness as she tore herself back from the mirror pool. She collapsed onto her hands and knees in the clearing, gasping for breath that seemed too thick to fill her lungs, palms bleeding where her nails had bitten deep into flesh. Virelle knelt beside her, offering no comfort but steady presence, as Isolde's body shuddered with the aftershocks of what she'd witnessed. "There is no future where both of you live unchanged," the witch said when Isolde's breathing had steadied enough for speech. "The bond you share defies natural law. Vampire and mortal cannot become one without consequence. One must lose themselves, or lose the other." Isolde raised her head, meeting Virelle's shifting gaze through tears that blurred her vision. "Why?" Her voice cracked on the single syllable. "Why show me this?" "Because you think love alone is enough." Virelle's tone held no cruelty, only weary truth. "It's not. It never has been. Those who came before you thought the same, that their feelings could overcome ancient magic, ancestral curses, the fundamental laws that separate mortal from immortal." She rose, moving to a gnarled tree at the clearing's edge, where she retrieved something from a hollow in its trunk. They were wrong. Returning to Isolde, the witch held out a parchment scroll, sealed with wax the colour of dried blood. "One last vision. Hidden. Forbidden. The others like you never saw this one. They didn't come to me willingly, didn't ask the right questions." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "You are different. Perhaps that matters." Isolde took the scroll with trembling fingers. "What does it show?" "I don't know," Virelle admitted. "This vision comes not from me, but from something older. It appeared in my possession the night your bond with the prince first formed, with instructions that it be given only to you, and only when you sought knowledge freely." "When should I open it?" "You must open it only when the choice comes, not before." The witch's expression grew more severe. "You'll know the moment, when all paths converge, when decision cannot be delayed. Until then, keep it close, but sealed." Isolde clutched the scroll, feeling it warm against her palm, as if reacting to her touch. "And if I opened it now? Then you would see nothing but blank parchment and forfeit whatever guidance it might offer when truly needed." Virelle stepped back. "Our time ends. The forest grows restless with your presence." Indeed, the trees around the clearing had drawn closer, branches intertwining above to block out more of the sky, roots pushing upward through soil in unsettling, almost animal movements. The red grove was reclaiming its privacy, pushing out the interloper who had taken more than her share of its secrets. Isolde rose unsteadily to her feet, tucking the scroll inside her bodice, where it pressed against her ribs like a burning brand. "Thank you," she said, though the words felt hollow in the face of what she'd learned. Virelle's smile was enigmatic, neither kind nor malicious. "Don't thank me yet, Bride of Thorns. Knowledge is a gift that often feels like poison." Without looking back, Isolde left the grove, following a path that seemed to form reluctantly before her steps, the forest parting just enough to allow her passage, while making clear its displeasure at her presence. The journey back felt shorter, as if the woods were eager to expel her. Or perhaps time simply moved differently here, compressing hours into minutes when it suited whatever ancient consciousness guided this place. The eastern gate appeared before her suddenly, though she could have sworn she was still deep within the forest. The same guards stood watch, their faces betraying no surprise at her return, as if she had been gone mere moments rather than half a day. "My lady," one murmured, bowing slightly as he pushed the gate open for her. The castle beyond seemed unchanged, yet somehow different, as if she viewed it now through eyes that had witnessed too much, that could no longer accept surface appearances without searching for the truths beneath. Servants passed with downcast eyes. Guards stood at rigid attention. Vampire nobles glided through halls with the arrogance of immortality. All unchanged, all suddenly stranger to her than they had been before. When she reached their chambers, Cassian was waiting, standing by the window where she had last seen him, as if he hadn't moved in her absence, though she knew that couldn't be true. He turned as she entered, his expression careful, controlled. "You saw it, didn't you?" he asked quietly. She nodded, unable to find words adequate to describe what the mirror pool had shown her. He stepped toward her, not touching, not yet, his gaze searching her face as if mapping changes there. "Tell me." "I saw myself. Alone." The words came slowly, painfully extracted from the chaos of emotion the visions had left her with. "I saw you. Gone. I saw 1,000 endings, 1,000 ways we lose each other." He reached for her then, and she let him draw her close, her body trembling against his solid presence, real, immediate, here in contrast to the terrible possibilities she had witnessed. "But I didn't see the one we'll make," she whispered against his chest, the forbidden scroll burning like fire where it pressed between them. "Because no mirror dares reflect it." That night, as darkness fell over Valenhart and the castle settled into its nocturnal rhythms, Cassian and Isolde came together not with the desperate passion of their early encounters, but with something deeper, more deliberate. They made love not out of fear or need or even desire, but defiance. Each touch a declaration against fate, each kiss a vow to rewrite the future. Isolde memorized him with hands and lips, the cool marble of his skin warming beneath her touch, the precise angle of his jaw, the texture of his hair between her fingers. She traced ancient scars and whispered their stories back to him, tales he had shared in quiet moments, histories written on his immortal flesh. Cassian worshipped her in return, with reverent fingers mapping the geography of her mortal body, with whispered promises against the pulse at her throat, with eyes that held centuries of loneliness now ended. He touched her as if committing every inch to memory, not in farewell but in affirmation that this was worth any price fate might demand. Every breath became rebellion, every shared heartbeat through their bond, a challenge to the doom Virelle had prophesied. "The visions are only possibilities," Isolde told herself as she moved beneath him, around him, with him. "Not certainties, not destiny. We defy expectations simply by existing," Cassian's thoughts echoed through their bond, growing stronger with each shared intimacy. Why not defy fate as well? When they finally lay quiet in each other's arms, sweat cooling on tangled limbs, the forbidden scroll had slipped from Isolde's bodice to rest beside the bed, a silent reminder of choices yet to come, of knowledge still withheld. She would tell him about it tomorrow, she decided. Share the witch's final gift, seek his counsel on when the choice might arrive. But not tonight. Tonight was for forging stronger bonds than prophecy, deeper connections than fate. Tonight was for believing that love, while perhaps not enough alone, might still be the foundation upon which they could build an unprecedented future. Far away from their defiant embrace, deep within the mountain that held Valenhart, on its shoulders, something ancient stirred. In a crypt forgotten by all but the oldest vampires, carved into bedrock and sealed with blood, magic renewed each century. An ornate bell of tarnished silver began to ring. Though no hand touched it, no wind disturbed the stale air of the sealed chamber. a figure draped in robes of white bone, not wearing them, but seeming to be partially composed of them, skeleton and garment merged into one unsettling form, raised a head that had not moved in centuries. Eyes like twin eclipses, black circles rimmed with corona fire, opened slowly, focusing on nothing visible yet seeing far beyond the confines of its prison. And whispered in a voice that cracked from disuse, that seemed made of dust and broken promises. The bond has formed. It must now be severed, or fulfilled. The bell continued to ring, its sound reaching no mortal or vampire ear, yet resonating through magic older than Valenheart itself, a death knell, a wedding chime, a warning, an invitation. The sleeper stretched limbs atrophied by long confinement, joints cracked, tendons snapped and reformed, bones shifted beneath skin that was neither living nor dead but something preserved in the space between states. They approach the precipice, it murmured to the empty chamber. The veil grows thin. The crimson path opens. With pain-slow movements, it reached toward a wall where prophecies had been carved eons ago, fingertips tracing symbols that glowed faintly at its touch. One sequence pulsed brighter than the rest, when mortal and immortal become as one, when blood and bond transcend ancient law, when love defies the throne of night, then shall the forgotten one awaken to claim what was promised, to unmake what was made, to reunite what was sundered. The figure's mouth, more wound than lips, curved in what might have been satisfaction or hunger. Soon, it promised the darkness, they come to me soon. In their chamber in Valenheart's west wing, Isolde stirred restlessly in Cassian's arms, troubled by dreams she would not remember upon waking, of bone-white hands reaching for her through mist, of a bell that told her name with each resonant strike, of a throne built from ice and vertebrae that waited, patient as only immortal things can be, for her to claim her place upon it. Chapter 13. The Rival's Bite. The invitation arrived on black parchment sealed in gold wax, the edges dusted with silver ash that smudged against Isolde's fingers when she handed it to Cassian. The paper seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, the elegant script appearing to float above its surface rather than resting upon it. Cassian read it without expression, though Isolde felt a flicker of tension through their bond, brief as lightning, quickly masked. "It's from Lord Everic," he said, voice flat as a blade laid on stone. "He's hosting a masquerade tonight at House Morvain. A peace gesture." "Or a trap," Isolde murmured, studying Cassian's face for clues to his thoughts. "Both," Cassian agreed, setting the invitation on the table between them. "Everic has been my father's confidant for 3 centuries. He doesn't extend invitations without purpose." Isolde traced the House Morvain crest, embossed on the parchment, a raven with a serpent clasped in its beak. Then why accept? Because refusing would signal weakness. Cassian moved to the window, gazing out at Valenheart's twilight-shrouded towers. After the court of judgment, all eyes watch for signs of vulnerability. To decline would suggest fear. "And is there reason to fear?" Isolde asked, joining him at the window, her reflection ghostly against the darkening glass. Cassian's mouth curved in a smile that held no warmth. "Always. But tonight, we show strength, not caution." He turned to her, taking her face between his cool palms. "Tonight, we remind the court that we are neither ashamed nor afraid." Isolde leaned into his touch, drawing strength from his certainty. "Then we attend as equals, not as prince and consort." "As equals," he agreed, pressing his lips to her forehead in silent benediction. "As the future they fear." Preparation for the masquerade consumed the remaining daylight hours. Servants bustled through their chambers, bearing garments, jewels, masks crafted by Valenheart's most skilled artisans. Cassian dismissed them all save for a single elderly woman, Marta, who had served his household for decades and whose loyalty was beyond question. "The usual preparations have been made, my lord," Marta informed him quietly as she laid out his formal attire. "Guards positioned along the route, allies alerted to your attendance." "And the other matter?" Cassian asked, voice equally low. Marta nodded once. "3 exit paths secured, as requested. The passage beneath the east garden remains unknown to most." Isolde pretended not to hear this exchange as she examined the gown selected for her, a creation of silver silk that shifted like liquid moonlight with each movement, threaded with hematite beads and what appeared to be actual starlight captured in tiny crystal droplets that glimmered with inner fire. "It's beautiful," she acknowledged when Marta approached to help her dress. "But impractical for escape should we need it." The old woman's lined face betrayed no surprise at Isolde's candour. "The underskirts separate with a single clasp here," she demonstrated, revealing how the voluminous silver fabric could be shed in moments, leaving a simpler sheath beneath. "And the bodice contains sheaths for 2 small blades." Cassian, observing from across the chamber, inclined his head in approval. "Marta has dressed vampire consorts for 60 years. She understands the dangers of court gatherings." "Not merely dangers, my lord," Marta corrected mildly as she began arranging Isolde's hair in an intricate style that appeared elaborate, yet would hold fast through flight if necessary. "Opportunities as well. Many battles are won with beauty and whispers, rather than blood and steel." As evening deepened toward true night, they dressed in silence, a ritual performed in parallel, each absorbed in private thoughts while aware of the other's movements. Isolde felt Cassian's focus sharpen through their bond, his mind turning from lover to strategist, from companion to warrior. She matched his shift, drawing on her growing understanding of vampire politics, mentally reviewing the allegiances and rivalries Cassian had mapped for her in recent days. The gown transformed her, silver cascading from shoulders left deliberately bare, the fabric clinging to her form before flaring at her hips in elegant waves. Around her throat, she wore the crimson silk that had become her signature, tied not as consort's veil, but as a choker that emphasized the vulnerability of her mortal pulse while declaring her refusal to hide. Her mask was shaped like a crescent moon, delicate as frost against her skin, crafted from polished silver etched with runes so fine they appeared as mere texture unless viewed in direct light. When she donned it, the magic woven into its making activated, casting a subtle glamour that made her features difficult to focus on directly, as if glimpsed through mist. Cassian chose black, not the severe, unadorned black of his daily attire, but something richer, more sensual. Midnight velvet embedded with garnet cabochons along the high collar and cuffs, the fabric seeming to absorb surrounding light only to release it in subtle shimmers as he moved. His mask was carved from a single piece of obsidian, rimmed with silver thorns that curved dangerously close to his temples, giving him the aspect of some ancient deity of shadow and moonless nights. Before they left, he took her wrist gently, his thumb resting against her pulse. Through their bond flowed his unspoken concern, his determination, his fierce protectiveness tempered by respect for her strength. "Tonight," he said softly, "they will try to pull you from me. With words, with magic, with promises, and threats. House Morvain has connections to the oldest vampire bloodlines, ones that consider my father's reign an interruption to their rightful rule." "Then let them try," Isolde replied, her voice steady despite the flutter of apprehension in her stomach. "They'll find I'm not so easily separated from what I've chosen." House Morvain stood separate from the main castle of Valenhart, perched on a neighbouring peak connected by a single stone bridge that arched like a sleeping dragon over the chasm between mountains. Torches lined the bridge, their flames unnaturally still despite the wind that tugged at cloaks and hair, creating the illusion of walking through a corridor of frozen fire. Guards positioned at regular intervals along the bridge wore Morvain colours, deep burgundy and gold, their eyes tracking each arrival with predatory attention. They bowed to Cassian with perfect correctness, but Isolde noted how their gazes lingered on her, assessing, measuring, memorizing. "They report to Everic," Cassian murmured as they passed the final pair of sentries. "Everything we say and do tonight will reach my father's ears by dawn." "Then let's give them something worth reporting," Isolde replied, straightening her shoulders as they approached the massive doors of House Morvain. The doors swung open at their approach, revealing a spectacle that momentarily stole Isolde's breath. House Morvain's ballroom glowed like the inside of a dying star. Golden chandeliers dripped molten light onto a crowd whose opulence defied mortal imagination. Vampires spun across mirrored floors that multiplied their movements into infinity. Their masks transformed them into faces of angels and beasts, ancient gods and forgotten demons. Music throbbed like a physical entity, thick with strings and percussion, and something darker beneath that made Isolde's skin prickle with unease. As they stepped across the threshold, a hush fell over the nearest revelers, awareness of their arrival spreading through the crowd like ripples in disturbed water. Conversations paused, dances faltered, eyes turned, first merely curious, then hungry as predators scenting unexpected prey. "Prince Cassian," announced a steward, his voice carrying through the momentary silence, "and Lady Isolde Marin." Not consort, not mortal. Simply her name, as if she stood as Cassian's equal. Exactly as they had intended. Cassian's hand rested at the small of her back, a gesture of support and possession both, as they descended the shallow steps into the ballroom proper. The crowd parted before them, closing behind like water, isolating them together at the centre of watchful attention. Isolde felt it immediately. She wasn't a guest here. She was bait, a curiosity to be examined, tested, perhaps destroyed if found wanting. "Smile," Cassian murmured, his lips barely moving. "They smell fear." Isolde lifted her chin, allowing a small, knowing smile to touch her lips, as if she possessed secrets that amused her, as if she welcomed their scrutiny rather than dreaded it. Through their bond, she felt Cassian's approval, his admiration of her composure. "Prince Cassian," a voice called from across the ballroom, "you honour House Morvain with your presence." Lord Everic appeared from the shadows at the room's edge, moving with the casual grace of a predator, confident in its territory. He was tall even for a vampire, his form draped in burgundy silk that rippled like blood with each movement. His mask, a fox-like visage crafted from polished copper and antiqued gold, seemed to mock those who gazed upon it, the expression eternally caught, between amusement and hunger. "Lord Everic," Cassian acknowledged with the barest inclination of his head, neither subservient nor overtly disrespectful. "Your invitation was unexpected." "These are unexpected times." Everic's attention shifted to Isolde, his gaze moving over her with unhurried thoroughness. "Lady Marin, moonlight suits you." "Be careful," she replied, meeting his stare without flinching. "You're speaking to a married woman." It wasn't true, not in any formal sense, but the claim-staked territory defined boundaries. Around them she felt the crowd's interest sharpen, whispers rising like the rustle of disturbed leaves. Everic's laugh was smooth as poisoned honey. "Marriage is a mortal construct. Our kind prefers possession." His eyes gleamed behind his mask. "And what is possessed can be transferred, under the right circumstances." Isolde tried to step away, disliking the hunger in his voice, the implication that she was property to be claimed rather than a person who had made her choice. But Everic extended his hand with a flourish that made refusal a public declaration of hostility. "Just one dance," he requested, though the words held command rather than invitation. "To honour House Morvain's hospitality." Cassian watched from where he stood, his posture relaxed but his energy coiled tight as a spring through their bond. "Your choice," his silent communication told her. I trust your judgment. Isolde hesitated, weighing the political implications. Refusal would create an immediate breach of etiquette, possibly the very reaction Everic sought to provoke. Acceptance placed her momentarily beyond Cassian's immediate protection, but demonstrated confidence in herself, in their bond, in Cassian's position. She placed her hand in Everic's. One dance, she agreed, the words a contract with clear boundaries. The music shifted as they moved to the center of the floor, strings crying out in minor keys, percussion beating like trapped hearts. Other couples joined them, surrounding them in concentric circles. A formation that wasn't coincidental but choreographed, Isolde realized, isolating her with Everic while maintaining appearances of a normal court dance. They danced. His hand was too warm against her waist, his grip too confident, as if he had already claimed victory in some contest she hadn't agreed to enter. Through the fabric of her gown, she felt the unnatural heat of him, hotter than Cassian, almost feverish. You don't belong here, Everic said as they moved through the elaborate steps of the dance, his voice pitched for her ears alone despite the surrounding couples. You're playing house in a kingdom that devours brides for breakfast. I've survived worse, she countered, keeping her expression pleasantly neutral for the benefit of watching eyes. Have you? His hand tightened fractionally at her waist. The others thought themselves exceptional too. Special. Chosen. He leaned in, voice brushing her ear like dark velvet. Tell me, does he let you sleep? Or do you wake to dreams of burning crowns and dying names? Her heart stumbled against her ribs. The visions from Virelle's mirror pool flashed behind her eyes. Herself on a throne of ice and bone, Cassian dead at her feet, the shadow that split from him during their blood wedding, the crystal coffin where she slept, never to wake. She began, but Everic moved suddenly, the dance step becoming something else entirely. He drew a blade, a thin silver fang no longer than his little finger, from a sheath hidden in his sleeve. With movements too swift for mortal eyes to track, he nicked her exposed shoulder, just enough to break skin, to draw a perfect ruby droplet of blood. She gasped, more from surprise than pain. The music faltered, the dance paused. Couples around them froze in tableau, audience to whatever drama now unfolded. And then, Everic raised his hand to his lips and slowly, deliberately, licked the blood from his finger where it had touched her wound. The ballroom erupted in hisses and murmurs. To taste a consort's blood without permission, especially the prince's consort, was a violation of ancient taboo, a challenge that could not go unanswered. Cassian appeared beside them in a blur of motion that left after-images in Isolde's vision. He moved with vampire speed, unconstrained by human pretense, by court manners, by anything except raw fury. His hand closed around Everic's throat, lifting the taller vampire as if he weighed nothing, slamming him against a nearby marble column with force that cracked the stone. "Touch her again," he hissed, voice a growl from the pit of the underworld, "and I will drain you into glass." Everic laughed despite the pressure on his windpipe, the sound ugly with satisfaction rather than fear. "She's not yours, Cassian. Not really. You know what's written in the old texts. You know what the bride bond truly signifies." Cassian's fist struck bone with a sound like branches breaking in winter. Then again. Blood hit the floor in arterial splashes, black in the golden light. The crowd gasped, but none intervened. This was vampire justice, personal and bloody, outside the formal structures of the Court of Judgment. "You forget yourself, cousin," Cassian said, the words precise despite the rage evident in every line of his body. "You forget who I am, what I command, what rights are mine by blood and by oath." "I remember exactly who you are," Everic replied, face bloody but expression triumphant. "The prince who plays at rebellion while dancing to his father's tune. The son who thinks himself free while wearing chains forged before his birth." Cassian's hand drew back for another blow, one that might have taken Everic's head from his shoulders, given the gathering darkness in Cassian's eyes, the lengthening of his fangs beyond their usual elegant proportions. Isolde stepped forward, pale but steady, She took Cassian's face between her hands, turning him away from Everick, forcing his attention to her alone. "Stop!" she commanded, infusing the word with all the authority of their bond. He froze, breathing hard, the rage in his eyes gradually receding as he focused on her face. Through their connection, she sent calm, reason, reminder of where they were and what was at stake. "She's already bound," Everick coughed from where he slumped against the bloodied column. But the prophecy never said to whom. The bride can be claimed by any of the royal blood, if the first bond proves insufficient. Cassian turned slowly, his face transformed from animal rage to something more controlled, yet equally dangerous. The cold calculation of a predator adjusting its strategy. "What did you say?" Everick smiled through bloody teeth, satisfaction evident in his ruined face. "Ask her. She's seen it. The witch showed her the paths, didn't she? The futures where your bond fails or changes into something else entirely." Isolde felt Cassian's shock through their connection, not at Everick's claim to her, but at the knowledge that she had visited Virelle, had seen visions he knew nothing about. His gaze returned to her, questioning, uncertain for perhaps the first time since she had known him. "This gathering is concluded," he announced to the watching crowd, his voice carrying the unmistakable command of royal authority. "House Morvaine's hospitality is acknowledged and hereby ended." Before anyone could respond, he took Isolde's arm and guided her swiftly toward the exit, his pace just short of supernatural speed. Guards moved to intercept them, then stepped aside at a gesture from Everick, who watched their departure with the satisfied expression of one whose trap has sprung precisely as planned. They fled through Morvaine's torch-lit corridors, across the stone bridge where the frozen flames still stood sentinel, past startled guards who made no move to detain them. Cassian didn't speak until they had reached the safety of Valenhart's West Tower, their private chambers secured behind doors reinforced with both physical locks and magical wards. He stood by the window, back turned to her, shoulders rigid with tension she could feel across the space between them. "Is there something you're hiding from me, Isolde?" The question hung in the air, weighted with implications, of trust broken, of secrets kept, of possible betrayal. Isolde removed her mask with trembling fingers, the silver crescent suddenly heavy in her hands. "I went to Virelle," she admitted after a long silence. "After the court of judgment, I needed to understand what was happening to us, what the bond was becoming." "And what did she show you?" His voice remained carefully neutral, giving nothing away. Isolde hesitated, then nodded as if confirming something to herself. "I saw the threads, Cassian, the possible futures branching from our choices. In one future, it's not you at my side. It's him." Cassian went utterly still. Not the normal stillness of a vampire at rest, but something deeper, as if his very essence had paused between heartbeats. "Everick?" he asked finally. "Yes." The admission cost her, scraping her throat like broken glass. "In one possible timeline, our bond breaks, or changes, and I end up bound to him instead." She crossed the room, standing behind him, close enough to touch but not reaching out. "Not yet. But I don't choose that path. I never would." He turned to face her, his expression haunted. "Choice may not matter. The magic that governs our kind is older than free will, Isolde. It follows patterns established when the first vampire rose from mortal death." "I don't believe that," she insisted. "I can't believe we're merely puppets dancing on strings pulled by ancient magic. What would be the point of fighting at all?" "To shape the pattern, even if we can't escape it entirely." He took her hands in his, examining her palms as if reading fate in the lines there. "And if I turn into something you don't recognize, if the bond changes me as it's changing you, will you still choose me, even then?" The question struck at her deepest fears. That their love might transform either of them beyond recognition, that the prince she had come to cherish might become something monstrous under the pressures they faced. "Even if you become a monster," she whispered, raising her eyes to his, I'll still be yours. He drew her to him then, arms encircling her with careful gentleness, despite the storm of emotion she felt through their bond. His lips found hers in a kiss that tasted of blood and fear and desperate affirmation, claiming yes, but also offering himself in return, vulnerable despite his immortal strength. "There's something else," she murmured when they separated. "Virelle gave me a scroll, one last vision. She said I must only open when the choice comes." She didn't know what it contained. "Where is it?" he asked, tension returning to his frame. "Hidden," she assured him, "in a place only I can access." He nodded, accepting her need for this one secret. If Virelle believes it important, then it likely is. Her kind don't involve themselves in vampire affairs without reason. He released her, moving to retrieve a decanter of rich red liquid. Not blood, but wine fortified with herbs that would ease the shock to her system after the events at House Morvain. As he poured 2 glasses, Isolde studied his profile, struck by a fragment of memory that had surfaced during their flight from the masquerade. A half-recalled image that seemed both foreign and achingly familiar. "Cassian," she began hesitantly. "Have we met before? Before you came to claim me as consort, I mean." His hand stilled momentarily before continuing to pour. "Why do you ask?" "At Morvain, when you attacked Everic. Something about your face, in that moment, triggered a memory. But it's blurred, like looking through frosted glass." She accepted the glass he offered, taking a small sip to steady herself. "I saw a younger you, I think. And blood. Someone protecting me." Cassian turned away, his expression unreadable as he gazed into the fireplace where flames cast dancing shadows across the chamber. "It was years ago," he admitted finally. "You were a child, no more than 7 or 8. I was travelling through mortal territories on diplomatic business for my father." The memory sharpened, details emerging from mist. "The winter fair in North Haven," she murmured. "I was separated from my family in the crowd." He nodded. Night was falling. "You had wandered into an alley where a group of men had gathered, hunters returning from the northern forests, drunk on cheap spirits and their own inflated courage. They surrounded me," Isolde continued, the scene unfolding in her mind's eye. "One grabbed my arm. I screamed, but the music from the fair was too loud for anyone to hear." "Anyone human," Cassian corrected quietly. "I heard you." The memory bloomed fully now, the terror of small Isolde, encircled by towering men who smelled of sweat and ale and malice, the sudden wind that seemed to sweep through the alley, though the air had been still moments before, the tall figure that appeared as if conjured from shadow itself. "You killed them," she whispered. "All 3 of them." "Yes." No apology, no justification, simple acknowledgement of fact. It was so fast. One moment they were laughing, the next. She closed her eyes, seeing again the spray of crimson against winter-white walls, the unnatural angles of broken bodies, the terrible efficiency with which Cassian had ended 3 lives in the space between one heartbeat and the next. "You knelt beside me afterward. You asked if I was hurt. You weren't afraid," he recalled, something like wonder in his voice. "Even with their blood on my hands, on my face, you looked at me as if I were some avenging angel rather than a monster." "You took me back to the fair," Isolde said, the memory completing itself. "You found my parents in the crowd. But they didn't see you, only me, suddenly reappearing, as if I'd never been lost." "I ensured they wouldn't remember my presence," Cassian explained. "It would have raised too many questions, created complications my father's court didn't need." "But you didn't erase my memory," she realized. "You left me with the truth, even if it was buried deep." "I couldn't bring myself to take it from you." His expression softened, vulnerability showing through the careful mask he maintained for the world. "Even then, something about you." He didn't finish the thought, but through their bond, she felt the emotion behind it, his recognition, even years ago, that she was different, important, somehow essential to him in ways he couldn't yet understand. "You've loved me far longer than I've known," she said softly, the realization settling into her bones like a truth she had always carried without recognizing. "Perhaps," he acknowledged. "Or perhaps I simply recognized what you might become, what we might become together." Later that night, she awoke in darkness to find Cassian kneeling at the foot of their bed, head bowed, hands clasped before him, in a posture she had never seen him adopt. She crawled across the bed to join him, the silk of her nightdress whispering against the sheets. "I didn't think vampires prayed," she said quietly. "I'm not praying," he replied without looking up. "Not to any god that mortals would recognize." "I know." "I'm bargaining," he admitted, raising his head to meet her gaze. In the dim light filtered through closed curtains, his eyes gleamed with something ancient and terrible, the full weight of his immortal nature exposed without the careful humanity he typically affected. With powers older than Valenheart, than vampire kind itself. "For what?" she asked, though she feared she already knew. "For a future where we both survive what's coming." His hand found hers in the darkness, cool fingers interlacing with her warmer ones. "Whatever the cost to me." "Not whatever the cost," she corrected firmly. "Some prices are too high, even for us." He didn't argue, but she felt his reservation through their bond, his absolute willingness to sacrifice anything, everything, to preserve her and what they had built between them. Far away from their whispered exchange, in the deep crypts of Ilarion where light had not penetrated for millennia, a cracked mirror that had hung unchanged on a forgotten wall suddenly reformed itself. The fractures that had marred its surface for centuries sealed with liquid silver that bubbled and hissed as if alive, cooling to create a perfect reflecting surface once more. Inside the restored mirror, a face emerged from darkened depths. Everic, his injuries from Cassian's attack already healing, his expression one of deep satisfaction. Not a reflection, but a projection, a communication across distance and barriers directed toward whatever ancient presence waited in the buried chamber. "They are divided now," Everic's image reported. "Seeds of doubt planted. The bond weakens with secrets kept." The entity that received this message remained unseen, its response unheard by any save Everic, whose smile widened at whatever answer came. "Yes," he agreed, nodding. "The mortal's blood has proven most illuminating. The infusion has begun. When next they face judgment, the transformation will be impossible to hide." His image rippled as if disturbed by unseen currents. Let the bond twist. Let love become a weapon. The mirror darkened once more, returning to apparent dormancy. But in the silence that followed, stone shifted against stone as something long imprisoned adjusted its position, preparing for freedom long denied, but now approaching with each beat of a mortal heart bound to immortal fate.